In January 1995, a man named MacArthur Wheeler walked into two banks in Pittsburgh and robbed them at gunpoint. He didn't wear a mask. He didn't wear a disguise. Instead, he had rubbed lemon juice all over his face. He believed it would make him invisible to security cameras. The logic, such as it was, went like this. Lemon juice works as invisible ink. You write with it, it dries clear, and nobody can see it until you heat it up. So maybe, he thought, it would make his face invisible too. He even tested it. He took a Polaroid photo of himself with lemon juice on his face, and the picture came out blurry. That was enough. He was arrested later that same day after police identified him from the surveillance footage. When they showed him the tape, he was genuinely baffled. "But I wore the juice," he said.
A few years later, a Cornell psychologist named David Dunning read about Wheeler's case, and it triggered a question that would change how we think about self-awareness. Dunning's insight was deceptively simple. He said, if Wheeler was too incompetent to be a bank robber, maybe he was also too incompetent to know he was incompetent. His stupidity protected him from an awareness of his own stupidity. That's a brutal sentence. But it pointed to something deeper. What if the skills you need to recognize your own mistakes are the exact same skills you need to avoid making them in the first place? If so, then the people who perform worst would be the least equipped to know it. They wouldn't just be bad at the task, they'd be bad at knowing they're bad. Dunning then his graduate student Dunning-Kruger set out to test this.
They designed a series of experiments at Cornell. In 4 separate studies, they tested students on 3 things: humor, grammar, and logical reasoning. After each test, they asked students to predict how they had performed. How many questions did you get right? Where do you rank compared to everyone else? The idea was to measure the gap between confidence and competence, to put a number on what we think we know versus what we actually know. The design was clean: objective scores on one side, self-assessments on the other. And what they found was unlike anything they expected.
The students in the bottom quartile, the worst performers, had scored in the 12th percentile. But when asked to estimate their performance, they put themselves in the 62nd percentile. Not just above average, they believed they were better than roughly 2/3 of their peers. A 50-point gap between reality and self-image. Meanwhile, the students in the top quartile, the best performers, showed the opposite pattern. They tended to slightly underestimate themselves, assuming the test was easy for everyone. They didn't realize that what came naturally to them was genuinely difficult for others. The worst performers were the most overconfident. The best performers were the most humble. And the gap wasn't subtle.
Dunning-Kruger called this the dual burden. The skills required to produce a correct answer are the same skills required to evaluate whether an answer is correct. Think about what that means. If you don't understand grammar well enough to write a correct sentence, you also don't understand it well enough to recognize that your sentence is wrong. The error and the inability to detect the error come from the same gap. It's not that people are arrogant. It's not that they're lying. They genuinely cannot see the distance between what they know and what they think they know. The competence required to judge performance is the competence required to produce performance. And if you lack one, you lack both. Since 1999, the effect has been replicated far beyond the lab. Medical students who scored lowest on anatomy exams overestimated their performance the most. The same pattern is shown up in driving skills, chess, and analytical reasoning. In one study, the lowest performers overestimated their score by more than 4 points on a 7-point test. A 2020 EEG study found neural correlates of the effect. Overestimators showed different brain activity patterns than underestimators when making self-assessment judgments. The pattern is remarkably consistent. The less you know how little you know. But here's the twist.
Not everyone is convinced the Dunning-Kruger effect is what it seems. In 2002, psychologists Joachim Kruger and Dale Mueller published a critique arguing that the entire pattern could be a statistical artifact. Their argument was this: when you have 2 imperfectly correlated measures, actual performance, and self-estimated performance, the statistical phenomenon known as regression to the mean will inevitably produce the pattern Dunning and Kruger found. Low scorers will appear to overestimate, high scorers will appear to underestimate. And when you add the better-than-average effect, the universal tendency to rate yourself above average, you get the full picture without any need for a metacognitive explanation. A 2022 paper built a statistical model that fit the data almost perfectly with no psychology at all. A 2024 study in Nature found no strong support for the effect in creative thinking when using advanced statistical methods. The debate is real and ongoing.
But here's the thing. Whether the effect is psychological or statistical, or some combination of both, the practical takeaway is the same. You can't audit your own competence using the same competence that's in question. That's the paradox. The tool you'd need to check your work is the tool that might be broken. So what can you actually do? You can seek outside calibration. Ask people who know more than you. Test yourself against objective standards, not against your own feelings. Assume that in any domain where you feel confident, there may be a gap you can't see. As Dunning himself observed about Wheeler, his incompetence protected him from awareness of his own incompetence. That's the trap. The most dangerous ignorance doesn't feel like ignorance. It feels like competence. It feels like certainty. And that feeling is the thing you can't trust. I'm Hidden Mechanics. If this made you think, subscribe. There are more invisible forces shaping your mind, and most of them you'll never see coming.